This is not a highlight video. That's how I'm starting these now because apparently the title isn't enough for some people. But Federer and Chung in the Indian Wells quarterfinals. I was really looking forward to this match because obviously it's a rematch of this year's Australian Open semifinals when Chung had to retire because of a very, very nasty blister. So I was excited to see these two guys go at it at full strength. And I'm very high on Hyeon Chung, that is. I did get to break down a few of his matches at the Australian Open, but and I said I was high on him, but now I feel like I've watched him enough that I feel like I have him down, and I am confident in saying that Chung, in my opinion, is going to get to world number one at some point in the next 4 years. I expect him to win majors as well. The announcers were discussing it in this match, and I felt like they were kind of selling him short. Patrick McEnroe and Brad Gilbert were on the call here in the States. And they weren't so sure if Chung was going to win a major or not. They were sort of on the fence. Seemed to be, kind of a 50-50 proposition. I'm pretty confident he will. So I'll quickly hit on Chung before I get to the match. The main reason that I'm confident that Chung will be number one in the world is because he's got that elite athleticism on par with the big four. On par, obviously, with that being said, with anyone in the world. And I just feel like that's a really, really big thing. As a result, he is already an elite defensive player. God, he covers the court well, and he's pretty good with his racket in addition. So defensively, he's already elite. Offensively, he's still maturing. He's not there yet. But I'm confident he's going to get there because, he's got two ground strokes that I feel pretty good about for different reasons. The backhand, that's his rock solid stroke. That's technically his, the best stroke in his arsenal. He's got beautiful technique. He's got beautiful balance. And that's, I feel like, the stroke that he can rely on to be very, very consistent and that he can rely on to hit very clean. The forehand, on the other hand, it's a little bit more unorthodox and you see some errors creep in on that side, but it's got the pop. It's got, it has the potential to develop into a very big offensive weapon. So I feel great about Chung in that respect. He needs to improve his serve. The serve isn't there, and I'll get into that more, how it hurt him against Roger Federer, because it certainly hurt him against Roger Federer. And I also, in the future, I want to break down Chung's service technique. That's a future video coming up. Let's get to the match. Roger Federer defeating Hyeon Chung 7-5, 6-1 to advance to the semifinals. So Federer came out of the gates. God, he couldn't have come out much better. Hitting the ball, clean as a whistle, moving really well, playing aggressively, serving incredibly. 4 aces in the first 8 or so points. So really couldn't have started much better if you're Roger Federer. Started the match, the first set out with a break, got off to a 3-love lead. And that just tells me something about where Federer is at mentally. When you can come out of the gates and there's no period of time where you're feeling your opponent out. There's no period of time where you're playing a little aggressively, less aggressively rather, and trying to get a feel for the ball. This is Roger Federer with momentum. Momentum that he's carrying from a match-to-match basis, still undefeated in 2018. It's just like we saw in 2017. It's really the same thing. Federer's game is on par with what we were seeing last year, which is pretty incredible. Even though the Australian Open run was a little bit easier this year in terms of draw than last year, it was really difficult. Other than that, same thing, carbon copy. Chung began to feel it on his forehand later in the first set. The breeze kicked up, which Federer mentioned kind of bothered him. So Federer's timing sort of came back down to earth. But Chung and that booming forehand, that inconsistent forehand, was consistently good in the middle of that first set, and Chung was able to get that break back and even things up. Another thing he was doing very, very smart. We talked about Chung's speed. Chung was playing a lot of balls down the middle, and I think that's a tactic that he's grown, that he's going to be very comfortable with, because Chung is so fast, so speedy. His court coverage is so good that he knows when he plays the ball down the middle with, you know, anything resembling pace or depth, anything resembling heaviness, he's going to be quick enough to track down any ball that even a guy, you know, as gifted as Roger Federer can hit his way. When Chung hits it, plays it up the middle with depth, no one's really going to be able to hit a winner or really bother Chung with a reply. It's when you give a guy like Federer an angle. It's when you pull him out wide and give him time. That's where the court or the ground that Chung needs to cover all of a sudden becomes much bigger, and that's where he's vulnerable. That's where Federer can you know, hit a winner off the forehand or the backhand wing. But Chung was playing a lot up the middle, and you know, that was helping him drag out rallies. What's Chung's best chance to beat Federer? It's to wear him down and to play long rallies. By playing the ball up the middle, Chung was able to do that because he doesn't give Federer an angle. So that was very smart by Chung. At 5'6", Federer kind of, you know, he just dials in. And this is what big-time players do. He played an excellent game at 5'6", Chung serving, trying to force a tiebreak. There's a couple things he did. He hits probably the best backhand of the match cross-court at 15 all. Federer hits a booming backhand cross-court. And then the next 2 points, he starts off the point with a short chip return, which drew a forehand error from Chung. And then on break point, it just kind of got Federer off to a good start in the rally, and Federer ultimately won that rally. That's a good play against Chung, especially on the forehand side. There's still ways where you feel like from the ground you can make Chung uncomfortable. He's still more of a rhythm player. So when you take away that rhythm, he's a little bit vulnerable. And another thing he showed is if you can, or Federer showed rather, if you can, you know, bring Chung to the net, if you can bait him in, he's not all that comfortable at the net, which really came to hurt him in the first game of the second set. Chung played an incredible rally on break point, and he almost had that break, and he botched the volley. So that was, you know, that turned into a good segue there. That first game of the second set was the best tennis by both players of the entire match. An unbelievable game where Chung was using his legs. There were long rallies. Federer was timing the ball well, dictating, but Chung was kind of hanging in there, hitting some big forehands. And ultimately, Federer was able to squeak out the game, save some break points with some big serves. And not all of them were first serves. Federer hit some big second serves in that game too. And just, you know, when you look at the match as a whole, you realize these are things that Federer can do that Chung cannot do. That was a very, very good game by both players. The only reason that Federer was able to separate himself in that game is he got some free points off the serve. So that kind of provided, you know, a mental letdown by Chung, and Federer was able to break right away. You see that emotional letdown pretty often. And then when Federer loosens up, Chung doesn't have the weapons to take the racket out of Federer's hand. So when Federer, you know, starts to feel good, you know, he has that lead, the nerves are gone, he begins timing the ball really well like he did early in the first set. Chung still lacks the weapons besides his movement, which, you know, I do consider that a weapon. Outside of that, Chung finds himself having to win baseline rallies against Federer, which he can do, but, you know, when Federer's on top of his game, Federer's gonna get the better of that, and that applies to even when Chung is serving. He doesn't have a big enough serve to, you know, gain any sort of advantage off of that serve, really. Federer's pretty much able to neutralize it completely. I want to make a technical point about Chung's serve. Chung's second serve pretty much was targeting Federer's backhand. But Federer was running around it the entire match. You need to have a slice serve in your repertoire, a slice serve out to Federer's forehand to keep him honest. You need to have that second serve. Federer used it very well in this match, actually. You need to be able to keep a righty honest. You can't let a righty run around his backhand on your second serve because he knows, because Federer knew that Chung was targeting his backhand. He was just running around it and hitting forehands. Chung needs to have that slice serve on his second serve. So Chung's fastest serve, I believe, was 122 in the entire match. We need to see better from Chung from that stroke. There's no reason with the size that Chung has, with the strength that Chung has, that Chung can't serve bigger. And that's pretty much all I got. Federer runs away with that second set and wins it 6-1. But, you know, like I said, very encouraged by everything I see by Chung. Pretty much, obviously, he's not at the point where he can beat Federer right now. But I do, you know, every time I watch Chung, I see, you know, a lot of reassuring attributes. The mental game is something I didn't mention at the top and I missed. He's so mentally sturdy, and I love that as well. Semifinals, Indian Wells. I got some good news and I got some bad news. I will be traveling on Saturday, so I won't be able to recap either of the matches on Saturday. The good news is that I think we know who's going to win the matches. I will be absolutely shocked if we don't get a Del Potro Federer final at Indian Wells, and I'll definitely have that one. I'll have that breakdown for you. If not Sunday, I'll have it on Monday. Hope you enjoyed this. Don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you next time.